Hello and welcome back to another episode of the In the Woods podcast. Today I am joined by, lead pastor Pete Goodman and Ken Gilmore. Pastor Ken Gilmore. Drop the title, sorry.
That's right. If we don't give our titles clearly, then people won't know how important we are.
Yes. Yeah. The highest reverend Ken
Good
Gilmore.
to have you back, Ken.
Good to be
This
back.
is your second time on the podcast, right? Or
Yes,
the
it
third
is.
time? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. In case someone maybe hasn't caught it, most people here know who you are, but you're currently really serving a huge role in helping with the teaching at the Marshall campus. Ever since Pastor Devin stepped away, you've really been instrumental in stepping into there, so appreciate it. But you've also been at the Battle Creek a little bit and actually on this weekend. So, good to have you, man, and love you back.
Good to be
So, two things. And we were talking beforehand, this series that we're doing, Christmas Karaoke, where we're taking songs and talking about them, when we put it together, and it was actually your series, you kind of threw out the idea, and it was cool. One of the things that we said was, normally, as much as we can, we want the campuses preaching the same thing. We basically said, whoever's preaching at whatever campus, just pick a song you like and roll with it. That's all that has to be combined. So there have been a number of weeks where we haven't even done the same song. Next week, it's different songs, different campuses. But then this week, you and I both did Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Yeah. Completely different directions.
Yeah.
Not even the same topic. Yours was probably much more on topic than mine was. I just went off in left field.
Oh, no, I thought it was good.
Let's
Did
do
you
this.
come to that song separately, or?
I don't think so. Well, yeah, I told him I was doing it, and then I said, you can do whatever you want. And then I asked you last week, what are you doing? You're like, Hark the Herald. Oh, okay, great.
It was on the schedule.
Yeah.
I was
All
happy
right.
with it.
I'll figure
That's
something
good.
out.
Yeah.
So let's do this. Just for people, because we have people at both campuses who listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe if I was somebody who attended Battle Creek yesterday, where did you take the thing? Where'd you go yesterday?
Yeah, so
Marshall?
the idea, part of it is I like to, I don't want to be a Christmas humbug, but like angels singing was just one of those things that I'm kind of like, where in the Bible does it talk about angels singing? It's like, hark the herald angels sing. And you go through the Bible, and maybe Revelation chapter 5, when they have the throne scene and they're singing. But in Luke, the angels say. And
You're
the
blowing my
angels
mind
said,
right now.
They're singing
wait.
on my flannel graph.
I have a
and
doctorate in New Testament theology, and I don't think I knew
This is
that it
ruining
doesn't
my
say
day.
angels sing.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, they
This
don't.
is small things they don't pay attention to.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like it's one of those. Like I said, I don't want to be a humbug, but
doesn't say
it's
they
fun
sing.
to point out the fact that no, angels are terrifying. The very first thing they have to say to people is, "Do not be afraid."
Yeah.
And I don't think they're singing it, and it's just one of those things. So
Do not be afraid.
Yeah, that would have been cooler.
it's like it's not a musical.
That would've helped.
And but that's the like. So I just started there,
Musical.
and it's funny because Charles's opening line wasn't that the angels were singing.
Right.
The
It's
heavens
the
were singing.
welcome,
Well,
the
the
heavens.
stars sing at creation. That's what we read in the scriptures. Sometimes that's angels. Sometimes it's like referred to as stars. Like, so it's kind of, there's room for angels singing. It's just not a part of Luke chapter 2. And so I just made a kind of point. I just like to have fun with something like that to kind of make people's brains kind of float in a different direction.
Yeah.
And so
You're a contrarian.
yeah, I'm a contrarian
I
in that.
appreciate
Yeah,
that
just
about
like
you.
fine, but a Bible nerd too. So and so that's kind of where I started, just to kind of introduce the topic, get you rethinking. And I was also talking about how the text itself of the songs, we just get so familiar with it, we don't realize what we're singing. And so the idea of the content of the song, is the angel's message, glory to God in the highest, and we have a new king, and this king is bringing peace. Well, the challenge is we sing about that, but the reality is we live in a world that isn't at peace. And so how can that be true, that this was introduced 2,000 years ago, and yet we're not experiencing the peace that you would expect to follow an announcement like that? So what's happening? And Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. So it's not like he expects there to be a utopia, but what he does expect is, okay, yeah, if I bring you peace, which is shalom or arene, isn't the absence of conflict only. It's actually wholeness and soundness.
Rebuilding.
Yeah, and the idea of putting it back together. Well, what God intends to do is, the message is, yeah, I'm creating these little pockets of my kingdom in another kingdom, ruled by the enemy. But there are going to be these little places of refuge where peace is actually established on earth until ultimately a new heaven and a new earth come in. And so that's where I was taking it, in the fact that we're not just to be peace experiencers. We're actually supposed to be peace bringers.
Yeah.
And that's what the angels were announcing with Jesus coming. Not the idea that he was going to make everything utopia in that moment, but he was going to give us the opportunity to actually bring the peace that he was bringing into the world, into our world.
That's good.
Yeah.
I didn't even talk about the song.
No, but you did, in the sense of, but I love the way you launched into the idea of, okay, there was this opportunity for disunity within all that. I thought that was it's a way of talking about the backstory of that hymn, which I think is good anyway.
Yeah, I don't know where I heard it. It was a while ago. I just heard the whole thing that actually George Whitefield changed his song. And as a musician and songwriter myself, I was in a band for a long time as a kid. If somebody changed my song and published it under their own name, I'd be like, what? I mean, I'd be up in arms. Yeah, I didn't say this on my message, but it actually wasn't that unusual. Yeah. I kind of played that down because I wanted to play up the tension, but people actually do that a lot back then. Just if you weren't there, I talked about how Charles Wesley's first line is how the welkin ring. And I didn't even know what the word. I literally had to ask ChatGPT what the word welkin meant.
What is it? You didn't tell us in the message.
Well, it means heaven, stars, the world,
basically the cosmos sings.
It literally means the ring around, the thing that surrounds us. So he was talking about creation, Joy of the World. Creation is singing and shouting, not angels.
Yeah.
So actually, who is the better theologian then? Is Wesley or Whitefield? It appears to have been Wesley.
I think Wesley was. That doesn't surprise me, because I think that would have been.
Well, because Wesleyans are smarter and better theologians than Calvinists.
Wow.
Boom.
Okay.
Burned.
Well,
So as I was talking about unity.
Yeah. Please come back on Sunday.
Do we have a disclaimer to run under that? Not all opinions expressed on this podcast.
So in saying all that, where I took the message was really, I just completely left the song. Just talked about the tension that existed between Christians over a theological issue, in that case, predestination. I come from both, even kind of in my upbringing, but my early years in following Jesus, and then the last 12 years, I was very non-denominational. And when people would come to my last church and they would say, what do you guys believe about X, Y, or Z? The answer was usually whatever you want. I would joke that we were a theological mutt. Even among our elder board, among our staff, you would get tons and tons of different opinions about things. It's kind of just who we were. But I now work for a Wesleyan church, which has a book of discipline.
We do. It's thick.
Discipline.
Great word for it.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a whole other conversation. Yeah. Where'd that come from? The discipline. But there are things that I don't have even a choice about. I had to sign an agreement saying I believe some things before I even took this job. It's a bit more no, we believe these things about certain things. So even in that, I'm having to get a little more comfortable with I guess I can't be quite as open with this as maybe I could have at my non-denominational church, but I'm still going to keep pushing because I just don't like when that stuff divides us. Did you, you were part of this, you've been part of this, let me start there. You're more familiar and comfortable in this environment. What I know theologically, apart from that, what I know historically is that John Wesley often said things and tried to do things that showed that he didn't want to fight over details, but he still fought over details sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're probably more of a better historian on that than I am.
No, I mean and I grew up in a non-denominational church,
right?
But it was highly theologically influenced by Wesleyan theology. So
it wasn't a Wesleyan church, but
it wasn't tagged as a Wesleyan
gotcha,
or Nazarene or Free Methodist, but we were in those circles. I mean, that was that was what I grew up in. And the idea for Wesley, from what I can see, is it's not that the details didn't matter, because man, you read what he would write.
He had strong opinions.
It was unvarnished, like direct. But at the same time, that was because he viewed the family as a family. He viewed George Whitefield as a brother. And so he would confront the things that he would disagree with, but always maintain, but we're still brothers. Like that's just the way it is. Yeah. And so that's the part of it where the whole idea of, you can stake ground theologically and say, this is just the way I see it. I know, because I grew up in this, I have a knee-jerk kind of thought process when it comes to theology that is very Wesleyan, because that's just what I grew up with. My predisposition is that way. When you say free will or providence, I can tell you which side I don't deny providence, but man, I'm on the free will side of that equation.
But because of your upbringing, you're almost predestined to think that way.
That's the challenge. Boom! But that's the thing. And so, but I never encountered that until I got to college. Yeah. And to be honest, even though we were a Wesleyan church, there are plenty of people who hold different theological positions than the Wesleyan church that attend a church, because that isn't always the end-all, be-all for what constitutes a church family, because we all have our differences. And I just look at it and go, there are some things that are lines that basically say, okay, this is not what we will cross. But that never excludes somebody from attendance or participation who may not agree. It just, as a denomination, though, because this is the other side of it, because we're democratic in our, this is clearly a denomination that formed in the United States, because there's congregational votes. Well, those congregational members who vote have to have a similar mindset. Otherwise, the church just becomes whatever the largest congregation in the denomination wants it to be. And that's where, so there are guidelines and say, hey, this is who makes us who we are. But at the same time, that doesn't. I used to tell people all the time, we are a church. We are not the church. The church is a universal thing, and we are a segment of it that have carved out some things that say this is who we are as a family.
We are a right church.
Well, hey, come on. There isn't a pastor or somebody that doesn't think they're right on certain beliefs. But at the same time, I am also wise enough to know that the family's bigger than just my own perspective or my theological pool. That's just the way it is.
So, Sarah, you grew up in this.
Yep.
And Woodland, formerly First Wesleyan.
Yeah.
We talked a few weeks ago, 120 some years of history. You've spent your life in it. What's been your experience, maybe over the years, changes, differences overall, of how you've experienced the church, being very either kind of closed-minded to things or being more open to other people? Like, what's your experience been like with all of that as you've grown up in this?
Yeah, I grew up, firmly in the seeker-sensitive, we leave the logistics out of it. However
so
you grew up.
Talking about it when you were growing up.
We didn't talk about it. I think even when it comes down to Arminianism and Calvinism, we didn't really talk about the Arminian side.
Arminians are where Wesleyans would have stood, free will. Sorry.
Yes, sorry. But there was definitely kind of this tone around John Calvinism that was just meh. There was...
He's a Buckeye.
There was certainly this is the wrong thing, or this, we almost would... I think there's almost an air of mockery around that viewpoint. It was just not something we talked about with any sort of real academia behind it, or any sort of
so it was
specific
more
teaching.
Specific, never specific teaching.
You didn't talk about it, but people all kind of.
We didn't talk about it, but we definitely threw it away.
Do you think a person who, in your experience, if I was somebody's I identify as a Calvinist, in the history of Woodland, would they have felt comfortable attending here? Do you think?
Yes.
Okay. Because we just weren't talking about it.
Because we didn't talk about it. I myself, any time that somebody is just going, oh, that's just stupid or wrong, I'm going to dive into it, because I mean, if it's so wrong, why do we think it's so wrong? And, so I mean, I've spent even the last couple years pretty heavily in some Reformed theology.
Are you becoming a Calvinist? Oh, no. Do I have to fire
Not
you?
becoming a Calvinist.
Gosh.
But they, yeah. But you do grow to have respect for the side that you throw away.
Sure.
And like you said, I loved your point so much about how disunity is easy. And saying like, oh, this name that my parents and my parents' parents have just kind of thrown away. It's easy to do that, as opposed to have an actual opinion about it yourself, whether that's, A, just having respect for another viewpoint, or, B, just even real, like knowing where you came from.
Taking the time to think about it and process it. Yeah.
So
I had to think through all this stuff I was raised in and left a good portion of it behind. I was raised in a very fundamentalist environment, hyper literal and reading the Bible. That's not me anymore. I had to process it, but I still love those people. My wife's family comes from Calvinism completely. My wife doesn't understand or know anything about it. But my father-in-law, I'm sure he would call himself a Calvinist. Two things. Maybe there's two different directions I go here. I want to get to both of them, but one is even just the connection with peace in general, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But before we do that, it's interesting because I want to bring this concept leave the 1700s and these philosophical arguments. What you said, though, about, well, we didn't get into that kind of stuff because we were a seeker-sensitive church, is itself a divisive issue.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it in the podcast. I don't want to get into that necessarily, but like I would say over the past couple decades, my perception living in this world is there have been less arguments about predestination, literalism, things like that, and more arguments about how to do church, because there have been so many changes, adjustments, sort of novel approaches to how to do church since the 80s. We're fighting about, I think we fight more, there have been more fights about music styles, I think, in my generation and maybe your generation than there might have been 200 years ago. So even though you say like, well, Woodland, we didn't fight about Calvinism and predestination.
We never got there.
I guarantee, though, that there were people who judged Woodland for being seeker-sensitive and thought you shouldn't do church that way.
Absolutely.
And people in Woodland who are doing church that way, this is how you're supposed to do church. You guys are idiots. You're not doing that. Like, the thing is, we always find something to fight about.
Yeah.
It's not just theology. It's even how we do church. Fortunately, now we've figured out how to do it right, and we're currently doing that. So,
we've arrived.
Did you? Because you even had your own inner feelings about it, being here and working here. Your own tension about whether you liked it or thought it was like.
Yeah.
What was that like being a part of the church? That you're like, do I even like how we're doing church? Do I think we should do it this way? Am I for this? All that kind of stuff that you would have wrestled with being a part of this community.
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely fascinating being on the side that is facilitating the experience. I'm even trying to think of how to describe that. It's very easy to observe and throw stones, as we know, pick it apart. But I mean, when it actually comes to like, okay, laying out a service, what's inviting to the Arminian or the Calvinist, what makes somebody feel welcome, but what also invites them into depth. And a quote that really has stuck with me recently was like, in the seeker-sensitive movement, what we won them with is what we won them to. Our faith was our church culture. Yeah. And, when disunity and, the hard things in life came, like we've started to feel that lack of foundation because of just the seeker-sensitive style that was kind of afraid to go to those maybe depths.
The basement wasn't there when the storm came?
The basement wasn't there.
It kind of brings to my second point. I'll ask you this, Ken, where I was also going. So you talked about, as Christians, being bastions of peace, of places of refuge in a broken world. And yet so often our fights are literally, the word peace in English means the absence of conflict. And we're creating conflict. Yeah. But then the pushback, the flip side to everything I preached about yesterday is, well, hold on a second, Pete. Aren't there times and places that you have to push back? Don't you have to sometimes draw a line and say, if you don't agree with this, how can we possibly be in unity? And then you're like, well, no, peace. Is there a line between peace and sometimes just needing to, even though it's conflict, I still have to stand my ground? And like for you, like where is that line? Is that a fair question?
I mean, it is, because it's one of those things where you just can't read your Bible and say that it's all peace. I mean, the prophets weren't peaceful.
Yeah.
Jesus wasn't peaceful with hypocrites. He was pointing things out to people that were a part of his family of faith, and yet at the same time he's reaching out to sinners and tax collectors at the same time, and he's not pulling punches with them either. He's just telling them there's a better way.
Right.
But that was true for the Pharisees as well. So it's like there is a measure of conflict for the sake of conflict. No, we shouldn't be about that, but conflict for the sake of truth. And I mean, that's a dangerous word, because there's so many people who will, like pound the truth nail and never, ever seem to even be aware there's a grace that's supposed to be a part of it. So we have to be careful, but at the same time, you have to stand for what you believe and know, without it necessarily being, okay, I've just had too many friends who I disagree with on certain aspects of theology or doctrine, that I still think are in the kingdom, even if I think they're wrong. And yet at the same time, I'm not going to give up the position that I hold. The question is I just don't get to be the Holy Spirit for them. And I have to at some point just kind of leave that in God's hands to deal with them on that, or deal with me if I need to grow in my perspective.
Yeah.
But this is the light I have, and this is the decision I'm going to make. And there are lines. There just always have been.
Are you comfortable sharing some of your lines, or did that make you uncomfortable?
No. When we as a church addressed the issue of human sexuality, we were in the Ann Arbor area. It was going to be a tough conversation, because there were literally people who are a part of our church who had never heard us directly address it. Mm-hmm. And when we directly addressed it and said, hey, this is where we draw the line, because we feel like this is not a cultural thing. This is a scriptural thing for us. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, I'm going to clarify our position, but I'm also at the same time going to clarify our disposition as a people. Our position is a traditional, historical, Christian perspective on human sexuality, but with a disposition of love, regardless of what you may think of our position. Like, our disposition is going to be loving. And we had people who just were like, I didn't know our church believed this. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry that was news, but this is where we hold the line. And we had people who are like, okay, it goes to the clarity is kindness phrase, that it was like, wow, I'm sorry it took us so long to help you understand where we were coming from. They benefited from the ministry that they experienced. They just reached a line that they were like, okay, I'm not going there. And we were like, okay, but we are. This is who we are.
Can I get a little bit messier with this question? So I'm connecting this to a message that I gave about a month and a half ago during our last series, where I talked about not drifting from the truth in culture. When we talk about drawing a line in the sense of what I am going to believe is true, I am not going to drift from this. I'm actually having a different conversation from the unity conversation, because the unity conversation is, no, I know you're not going to drift from your line, and I know this person's not going to drift from the line. The real messy question is, what lines mean we can't still be in unity? Yeah. So if I say, hey, just so you know, this is what we believe and what we're going to teach, just clarity, we're not moving from this line. You are still welcome to come be a part of our community and serve. Or, hey, just so you know, if you don't follow this line, you're not going to be able to lead here or serve here. Yeah. We're probably not going to hang out and be friends. Yeah. Is there a line among other Christians, or can you think of some things that you might say, hey, if you're crossing this line, unity is not even possible? Is that a fair question? And I could answer it myself. I just want to throw it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a couple different examples. Paul has John Mark, who abandons them during his missionary journey, and then has a falling out, and says, okay,
because Barnabas wanted him
to come back, and Paul's like, no, absolutely not. Was that a biblical stance? No. It was enough to divide Paul and Barnabas from their ministry together for a season. Now we know that John Mark ends up back into ministry with Paul. There's some type of restoration. We're just not given the detail. Was that division wrong? I don't think it was wrong. I think it just was. And it didn't mean that Paul didn't think Barnabas was going to go to heaven or, couldn't partner. They just could not walk that journey together anymore because of a decision making, because of a leadership decision. But when Paul's writing to the churches that are beginning to readopt the law as a standard for their faith, trusting in the law as opposed to trusting in Christ, he doesn't say, well, that's okay. You have your nuance, I have mine. He's like, no. And he uses visceral language to go against those that are trying to reintroduce the law into a community.
Because he saw it as heresy.
He saw it as heresy. And I think the problem is we throw that heresy term.
We do.
I mean, you look at the blogosphere, you look at podcasts, and there are people who use heresy, and I'm just like, that's a finger, that is a light finger, a trigger finger on heresy for some people.
Right.
And I think we got to be super careful to be like, yeah, there are our lines that we can't be crossing. Kirk Cameron just recently talked about annihilationism as opposed to eternal torment. That's and there's people, he's a heretic now. And it's kind of like, well, is he a heretic or does he have a perspective that, okay, I may not agree or I may agree, but it's like, I don't think that rises to heresy. And
if you're going to play the contrarian though, okay, which we're both contrarians, so let's do it. The word heresy means contrary to what is true. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be extreme for it to be heresy.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with someone who thought the Holy Spirit is the feminine side of God. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I was like, I would never call you a heretic, but you're broaching on things that I would say are heretical ideas of who God is. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
If I believed 100% in my core that there is a literal location of molten, smoldering lava that a human being's soul will burn for eternity, and you denied that, my brain would say, well, you're denying sound doctrine, so therefore you are a heretic.
Yeah.
And this is the challenge. I almost wonder if the problem isn't we throw heresy around too often, maybe we just put too much weight on heresy. I don't know. Maybe it's okay to be like, you know what? It's okay that you where is the line of okay, if you're contrary to what I think is sound doctrine on these three things, I'm not going to brand you as a person a heretic. We can still get along. But if you cross this line, I'm not even sure we're in the same family anymore. To me, that's the real tension. Mm-hmm. Because when I see people online, and I'm not spending a ton of time looking at it, when I see people online announcing that Kirk Cameron is no longer part of the body of Christ, it's like, what's in your brain that you think that statement is true? When I see people angry that a guy they respect and thought was in their camp has left their camp. Perfect example of what I preached about.
Yep.
He was a fundamentalist who's no longer, he's kind of more now, I guess, more in my camp. They're angry, they're upset, and they think he's doing and saying something that is untrue and wrong and heretical. To express that is just doing what Wesley did and what I can do sometimes. Hey, I think you're wrong. You shouldn't do that. You're wrong. And if he did it in the public sphere, then he's game for being responded to in the public sphere. I don't know if he did.
Yeah, he did.
He did. If you posted on social media, you did it yourself.
Yeah.
Rob Bell wrote the book. He got what he got coming. Whatever.
Yeah.
But the issue to me isn't we're going to disagree. It's, have I now kicked you out of Christianity and we can't be unity anymore? And I would say, Pete Goodman would say, your view of hell or heaven or, the beginning or the end or whatever should never kick someone out of the kingdom. But other people would be like, no, if you don't agree with those things, you're not a Christian. And that's the real rub for me is I feel like I have a much bigger fence than some people. But then I'm like, but even my view of having a bigger fence itself is something we're not seeing eye to eye. It's just, it makes my head spin.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will say there are things that if you step outside of, there are lines that you can cross that I'm like, I think we're no longer siblings, right? And obviously, if you deny Jesus is fully God and fully man, we're something else. You might as well go be a Mormon. We're not the same thing anymore. But I really wrestle with like, even like, what does authority of Scripture mean to you? I don't necessarily wrestle with whether your blanket statement, whether you're affirming, because if a Christian is affirming because they honestly, genuinely believe the Scriptures that speak of human sexuality are culturally connected and they don't think they apply for today, I vehemently disagree with you. I think you're wrong. I think that's poor hermeneutics and poor study of even culture. But at least you're still trying to live your life by the Scriptures. A Christian, I just did that in quotes for those listening, who says, I know the Bible teaches that wrong, but we're past that. I don't care about that anymore. You've crossed a line that I can't stick with you anymore, because now we're not wrestling with interpretation. We're wrestling with what does it even mean to submit your life to the Lordship of Jesus. If you are not choosing in your own life to submit everything to what God is saying is true or telling you to do, unity becomes almost impossible with me. And this is I didn't get into this, but the analogy that I would draw is I am always going to find things in my marriage to disagree with my spouse about constantly. As soon as we got home yesterday, we were like, the one thing we can't disagree about though, is that we're both going to be faithfully committed to each other and that we're married and no one else can come into this relationship. If one of us moves away from commitment to the relationship and what it means to be married, that's a disagreement that now is blowing the whole thing up. And I think if somebody else is moving away from what it means to be submitted to Jesus and his word, I can still love them and be kind to them, have a disposition of love, but unity is now becoming impossible. And you've crossed a line that I'm not going to be able to follow you in. And I would say if somebody wants to serve or be a part of Woodland Church, definitely a staff member, if your disposition is not Jesus is Lord, whatever he says goes, we're not going to, I'm not going to work with you as a church. I'm not going to, I can love you, but we're not on the same page. Yeah. So that's my line.
The way I always looked at it is the closer you are to the center of influence and leadership, the greater continuity there has to be.
That's good.
Between beliefs.
Yeah.
Because when you get to that, like the more periphery you are.
That's why I have to fire Sarah for being a co-host.
The more periphery you are, though, that's the reality. Like there's learning that needs to be done. I didn't get here because it was divine revelation. I was raised in it. And I can't expect somebody who wasn't to get where I am immediately. Like that may take some time, but I also don't necessarily make them a preacher or a leader within my organization or my family, because that's more central.
But even with central things, sorry, just to come back, I don't beat a dead horse.
Yeah.
There's a difference between knowing everything Jesus wants for me, which is a lifetime, and I'm going to die not having known everything Jesus wanted for me, versus what around here, you're going to hear this a lot more. What does it mean to be rooted? To come to a place of decision, like what the word repentance is getting at is you don't set the rules.
Yeah.
You're churning away from setting your own rules, and you're saying from now on, Jesus is going to set the rules. That doesn't mean I know all the rules. It doesn't even mean I'm going to follow all of them, because trust me, all of us still don't. It just means I have a dispositions in my heart that I've made a decision as best I can. That's the direction I'm going to live my life.
Yeah.
So you can be massively different on the spectrum of where you're at in the journey of Jesus being completely Lord and doing all the things. But if you're not on the journey of, no, I'm walking this way, and the way that I'm walking is he's king, I'm not, then I don't know how to have unity the way that the Bible talks about. And even Jesus said, I want those who believe in me to have, and the word believe means to give yourself to have faith in. Like unity comes from those who are on that path together. So if there's another church out there who is like, hey, we're having this thing, we'd love you to join us, be a part of it. And, I talked to the senior pastor, and he's like, well, I don't really believe the Bible is fully true, and I pick and choose the parts I like, but whatever. I'm genuinely gonna be like, listen, love you, man, or female, whatever. But we're not going to be in partnership here. Yeah. You're off the path. But if they were like, hey, we actually read the Bible this way, and here's why, and I'm like, I disagree with that completely. But I can see you're at least trying to be committed to Jesus, and we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this one, but we can still go do mission together. And that's a difficult path to walk, but it's where my line is, if there's a line of my
and we were invited to join the local Mormon assembly. Wanted to invite us to be a part of a Christmas concert. Okay. And there were people in my church who were like, oh, that would be neat. And I'm like, yeah, that's a partnership though, that's granting a certain equality between our positions that I don't want to be a jerk.
It's also going to be confusing to your people. What are you saying
exactly
about
and to other people who I know I disagree with that viewpoint on God, and that's just a bridge too far.
It is too far. And that's a good example. Yeah, Mormonism is a bridge too far. You've crossed a line that I can't follow you on. The challenge though is Mormons don't think we've crossed a line. No. They don't look at Christians like, oh, you guys are one too far away. They're like, no, we're part of you. And then Christians are like, no, you're not. Which is exactly how the Jewish people looked at Christians. Yeah. For the record. That always kind of helps me paint it in my head there.
I loved your point though about the further you get away from leadership, it does become a little bit more ambiguous, and those lines are not as tight. So, I mean, even just to ask some questions from the lay side, because, I mean, to expect all of our lay people to get to the point where they're understanding the philosophical roots of their beliefs and, okay, we're all on the same page. We're not going to get there, right? So I think the picture that came to my mind is like, okay, pretend like we're viewing the just American church from like a military drone, and we're only watching the church through their heat signatures. Like, where are they? What are we doing? Regardless of what conversation is happening, we're all kind of just huddled in our own little buildings, in our own little camps, which, like you said, I mean, it's really easy to clap during a sermon about like, we want unity between our churches, we don't want competition. But I think that the isolation that happens is more quiet, and it comes through those almost more benign and sound decisions, like, well, it's, we can't make those partnerships, which is real, which is true, like forming those partnerships is confusing to our congregants. Like, how do we get out of our huddles despite those actually really real lines that all of us don't really want to cross, but we do want to go on mission? Like, what does that actually look like for the lay person to cross lines?
So it's a good question, and it creates a good opportunity, because literally my answer to that question is also forcing us to end this podcast. In 14 minutes, we have to be at a organization who is not connected to any specific church here, but all churches in our town pour into to give them money for the Christmas offering. And I think in some ways, generosity is one of the answers to that question. How we use our resources and how we pool together. I don't think it means we need to have a big unity service every month. It's just not realistic.
Right.
But I do think, to give you a specific one, Alternatives, the pregnancy care clinic here in town. I don't know what they believe about Calvinism. Don't care.
Right. Yeah.
I am on board with the mission, and churches that have a completely different view from me, from John Calvin or spiritual gifts or whatever, have no problem going to Alternatives and saying, what do you need to help women in crisis pregnancy situations?
No shortage of opportunity.
When we serve our city together, I think that's the greatest sign of what Jesus was talking about. I don't know that Jesus, and we really do have to end because we have to be there in 13 minutes. I don't know, though, that Jesus cares if we're having unity services. I think unity looks like, how are we accomplishing our mission to the world to love it and see peace and goodness brought to it. you got a 1 or 2 minute close to that, and then we got to get in the
Finish us
car
up,
and
Ken.
go.
Well, we make it more complicated because we have a discussion about the things that are important. They're important to theology and to doctrine and things like that. But the essentials to the faith are not as complicated as how we get there.
Yeah.
That we need to be saved is what's true. How we get saved, how does God interact with it?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a message of salvation. The angels announced what they announced to shepherds, the lowest in the community, and they didn't walk away going, so what is it we're supposed to do? Like they went exactly to the manger, because that's what they were announced. And as long as we're clear on that message, there's a lot of room for disagreement. And that clarity also says, and this puts you in partnership with us. This puts you on a different path than us, and that's okay. We're going to be with our partners, and we're not going to shift over here just because it's uncomfortable that somebody's over here. Yeah. And that's, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we need to end it.
So we are literally about to close this down and jump in the car. I think we're going to be a few minutes late. It's okay. Yeah. Over the next 3 hours, I think, we're taking checks to 7 or 8 different places here in Battle Creek that you guys at Woodland Church made happen, your generosity. We're going to tell those stories. You'll hear about them, especially at a Christmas Eve service and beyond. Make sure you're there. Guys, thanks for joining us. And let's get out of here and go do some good in our city.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.